Ilke Dolstra. I started the Nix project a long time ago, and I'm a co-founder of Determinate Systems. And I'm also the president of the NixOS Foundation.
Next slide. All right, so we're going to have to do this because this is pretty big. I want to say giant thank you to everyone that took part in making this happen, the volunteers, the organizers. If you could just lift your hand, I'd love to just look at you again and say thank you. Are you out here, organizers, volunteers? I see y'all. Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on. All right, thank you guys. So, huge thanks to the Scale team. I have no clue how many folks are watching us live. We'll all have video recordings after this. You can come back to it or not. I'm sure it's probably a few million. And again, we had 2 NixPack days. So Ilke and I do this thing. It's just so you know, we're not AI. It's like, that's me, that's Ilke. So you don't get confused. Next slide. Cool.
All right, so first we'll have a bit of a look at some metrics about community growth. So this picture shows the size of NixOS releases, or rather the number of contributors and contributions. I'm a bit incompetent, so I wasn't able to update this slide for the latest release. But actually, 2311 had 2100 contributors, so it's actually all the way up here. The Nix packages and NixOS community keeps getting bigger, and that's really awesome to see. Next slide. Also, for people who care, there's some people care about stuff like GitHub stars that grew from, I think I screwed up here.
It's, if you click one more button, it will show it.
Ah, exactly. Yeah. So 9.7
We're really good in
thousand
design.
to 15,000 in the last 2 years. Number of merged pull requests in May 2022 versus last month went from 3,800 to 5,700. It's an amazing number of contributions. And they're getting merged. I mean, we also have a lot of open pull requests, but so this is a picture that shows the number of repositories created every day on GitHub that contain either a default.nix or a flake.nix or a shell.nix. One interesting trend here is that you see a lot of uptake of flakes. So we have something like 50 repositories projects a day starting with a flake.nix in them. I think this is from the marketing team. This shows the Google Trends for Nix packages. I have no idea why it suddenly skyrocketed here, but that's great to see. Maybe Rock can explain that later. Okay, next one. And now the scary part, the binary cache. That's sort of the most critical thing that our infrastructure team provides. Everybody relies on the binary cache, and it's been around since, I think, 2012, and since then we've never deleted anything from the binary cache, so it keeps getting bigger and bigger. So, for instance, in September last year, it was 346 terabytes in infrequent access, so that's the stuff older than a year. That has grown since then to 399. And we also have 140 terabyte in standard access, so that's sort of the recent stuff. And it went from, in that same period, so something like 7 months, from 770 million objects to 793 million objects. So that costs a lot of money. It used to be completely sponsored, but the company that was sponsoring that stopped doing that. So since then, we get some sponsoring of our S3 bill by Amazon, so we're very grateful for that. But it's not complete. Yeah, we can applaud that. But we still have a pretty big storage cost every month, something like 6,000 euros. So we're currently looking into garbage collecting part of the binary cache. Or maybe we can, if people think, hey, I really rely on the binary cache never deleting anything, then talk to us. Maybe we can figure something out. Also extremely useful to us is the Fastly CDN. We would be completely dead without them. So it's extremely efficient cache. So it has a cache rate of something like 98%. So you can go to the next slide. So this shows the weekly traffic to cache.nixos.org has also been going up quite a bit. So we're getting something like 750 terabytes of traffic per week. And next slide. That is something like 1.5 billion requests per week. So we should really thank Fastly for their huge contribution. So applause, please. Okay.
Cool. So, yeah, going on from what Ilko was saying, I think the community has been growing, right? The usage has been growing, and we all love Nix. We all want to continue using Nix. As you can see, we're trying to make things as transparent as possible, right? How much data we have passed through. In a second, you're going to see some financials. The idea is that, as a community, as we're coming into this technology is not yet fully, self-sustaining. So help in that regard, both either by contributions or financially or whatever it is, hugely recommended and appreciated. And with that, I'll kind of tie into the NixOS Foundation. So it's a little teaser into it. I know there's a lot of folks that are new to the community. What is the foundation? We only meet once a week in Cloaks and in Ilko's basement. So other than that, we're a pretty cool group. But in reality, the foundation has two charters. One is keeping the lights on for today and tomorrow, but also helping to create a basis that makes the light shine brighter for the coming years and the coming weeks. And if you move one more slide, I'll give an example of the financials. Oops, slides got mixed, but one more. One more? Thank you. So examples of the foundation of kind of the actions that we take and the way that we operate is in a way where we currently have a mechanism that the foundation does not make technical decisions. The foundation is there to handle the legal, the bureaucratics, the financials, the pretty much the inbound of funding, the fiscal hosting, and everything around that clause. But also the foundation is trying to build up a muscle and a mechanism to help unblock and facilitate community level escalations. So the foundation is, again, not a group of folks that hide in some basement. We really encourage you to reach out to us. There are more than probably 10 ways to reach someone from the foundation. One is obviously in person at NixCon, but two is on Matrix, on Discourse, on email, on everything. And we really appreciate that. The other thing I would say is that foundational conversations, there are no barriers. There's nothing that the foundation is talking about that you can't take part of if you care about it. So a lot of times there's assumptions that there's things that are not really talked about, like, internal financials or partnerships or decisions that are being made behind closed doors. None of that is the case with the way we like to perceive things. So if you care about it, reach out, we'll involve you, you'll be part of that. So, and also give us that feedback. So just some examples from 2023 and leading into this year was, we'll talk a little bit more about the S3 grant. So we did have a situation where a long-time contributor financially had to drop out. The community did an amazing effort, and we were able to secure funding, again, from AWS and partners and contributors, and a long-term effort around that. There's a lot of building up relationships that we're doing, right? There's a maintenance cost to it. Like, we need to keep talking with Fastly so they don't wake up one morning. It's like, what is this bill going out for $50K a month? And we're like, oh, no, it's the cool guys at Nix. Grant and event funding program. So we launched that actually for the first time last year, where Nix has a grant program. If you want to do something smaller, because we're not yet a multi-billion-dollar community, but if you want to do something smaller, like a meetup or a get-together or some like Nix hack, or buy a sign for a conference that you want to go talk about Nix, we have a way that you just fill in a form. We try to approve them almost on a weekly basis, and we're pretty happy to do so. those who are not familiar, a lot of the funding that is coming into Nix comes from a European project called NGI. And I don't know if Ilko will have a chance to touch on that a bit in a bit, but that is a huge program that allows to fund a lot of Nix-related efforts. So we're in the US, North America, lots of North American here in the crowd. If there's projects or programs or grants that are also tied to the governments on this side that can be tied into the community and help support the community, we'd love to do that, right? We don't have visibility into everything, and the more we know, the better. So that's really big. Another thing last year was we started a formal effort with funding for the documentation team, right? Making Nix easier to adopt, bringing in folks that know how to write docs. I have no clue how to do that. There are folks like Zach Mitchell that know how to do that, and he's helping lead that effort. And then a bunch more. The one click. Now, what do we care about moving into 2024? So we care about quite a few things, but there's a few big ones. One is we care about how do we grow as a community. And growing as a community means that we need to be able to bring in more contribution, open things up more to newcomers, but it also means that we need to be able to fund efforts. There's only so much scale that we can achieve by hoping that, you know, everyone here has 2 hours over a weekend to go and contribute to it. Now, there's going to be some of us that are crazy and want to go into the nights with, I see some folks laughing, it's like, you guys, and do this as an unpaid full-time job, and thank you. But there's going to be a lot of efforts that we need that funding for. And therefore, a big focus for this year is how do we define funding inside of the Nix community? Up until now, it's been donations, and you'll see that in the financials that I'll jump to in a second. We've had a major range of about $40,000 to $60,000 of euros of donations a year. That is not enough to make Nix sustainable, which I'll also talk about. So there is a big topic because some of that funding will need to come potentially with a transactional relationship. A donation is kind of like throwing cash or leaving it at our door and saying thank you. But if we want to go bigger and we want to be able to bring in folks like, for instance, you know, Fastly or put them on the site as a logo or things like that, what do we feel comfortable with? It's discussions that we should have a community, you know what we're comfortable with and move forward on those regards. So that's one. The second one that Tiofan will be talking about is empowering teams and individuals. Right, so we've been small, we've been hacky, that's been able to let us progress. How do we move from that phase to a phase where folks coming in or just folks existing in the community for a while feel empowered to make decisions, right? Like, I don't want folks to feel like, oh, I'm going to make that decision. What if there's pushback? And that is creating kind of like lowering the bar or not allowing people to come in and make an impact. So that's happening. That also has to do with funding. That has to do with teams and individuals and all of that. And one of the discussions that, I don't know if folks have been online recently, but it also is tied to funding. And one of those discussions are around sponsorship, right? How does the community feel about sponsorship, and how can we create a policy that, guess what, is reproducible, because that's what Nix is. As we grow and as we become more professional and more official, and as we want to grow into a wider in-house name and every developer, and maybe even being taught in college or whatever it is, we need to be able, for the external perspective coming and looking at us, to say, I probably know how this decision will look like in 6 months because there's a policy in place, there's a sentiment, there's an expectation, right? When we're small, when we're hacky, we don't need that. We're like 50 people, 200 people in a room, and we kind of get each other. When we're starting to expand to communities of 100,000, 500,000, we want folks to feel welcomed and safe, whether it's, you know, whoever that person on the other end is. And a lot of that has to do with defining things publicly, making them transparent, so that they know how those decisions are made and what they can do within our community. That's a little bit about the foundation. I'll pause in a minute for questions, and we'll do questions at the end. But before that, Tom, can you go back to the financials? Cool. So we're going to be releasing another deeper snapshot of this. We try to do this at least once a year. It gives you a look at anything that's coming into the foundation and going out of the foundation. These are the things that are on our books, right, from AWS to miscellaneous. So this is like Ilko's protein bars. No, I'm kidding. The costs, but the serious costs that are not on the balance sheet that Ilko mentioned are things like Fastly, like Equinix Metal, and those are really, really big costs, right? So that means that if tomorrow morning, for some reason, one of these sponsors, donors decides, I don't like what's happening in Nix, or I don't want to do Nix anymore, and they drop us concerning. We had that situation kind of come up with the S3. We were able to come together as a community and solve that, but we don't, we want to create a baseline. We want to create a treasury that is able to become self-sustainable. One click. Thank you. That's the goal, right? The goal of the foundation today is to make Nix self-sustainable, meaning that we have an income that is allowing us to operate with a 12-month buffer, meaning that all of you can go to sleep totally well at night, knowing that your systems are running Nix, NixOS, Nix packages, and all of that, and you'll wake up tomorrow, and no matter what, everything is going to be fine for at least 12 months, even if everything suddenly drops all of a sudden. Do I want 24? Yes, but 12 months is usually enough. I think we're a strong enough community. We can probably figure it out in that timeline. So that's what I wanted to talk about there. Let's skip forward. One more. So the quick S3 story for folks that weren't here, sponsor couldn't fund anymore. They've been funding it for 13 years, which is insane. Sorry, this is a really great drawing. I'm really good at this. So we actually, sponsor decided to drop off. We were notified. We kicked off a S3 community thing, kind of like, hey guys, making it transparent. We're looking for solution. It took us 14 days. In those 14 days, there were hundreds of community members that came together to think about short-term resolutions and long-term resolutions. There were dozens of community members that offered their services for companies that they work for and things like that. And that's what it means to be an insanely strong community. 14 days it took us to the time where AWS came in, gave us the funding and the sponsorship for 12 months, and allowed us to do what was important to start thinking about the long term of it. How do we make the S3 more sustainable, right? And Ilke, you want to say a few words about long-term S3?
So yeah, the long-term plan right now is that we'll do a periodic garbage collect of cache.nixos.org. So that kind of hurts because we don't want to harm the reproducibility of Nix packages in NixOS. In theory, of course, you can always rebuild ancient versions of Nix packages from source, except of course that those sources might have disappeared. That's why a lot of people still rely on things like source tarballs being in cache.nixos.org. So we want to go about this in an intelligent way. We don't want to just nuke every store path older than 2 years, for instance. So the current plan is that we're first going to delete old NixOS and Nix packages releases, meaning probably something like NixOS and Nix packages releases older than 2 years, except for the most recent version of every release branch. So we would keep, say, the most recent version of the 1709 NixOS release. So you can at least still use that. So the releases that we keep, those are the garbage collection routes. So every store path reachable from the packages in those releases, we will keep them. But we will also keep all the fixed output derivations. So we will not get rid of things like tarballs. So you should still be able to get a version of Nix packages from 2013 and rebuild it from source, because the sources will still be there. It will just take a lot longer. Yeah, so we'll delete the releases, or rather we'll initially move them to Glacier. So if it turns out that this was a really bad idea, or somebody says, hey, I'm willing to contribute $10,000 a month to make sure that you don't have to garbage collect, then we can still recover that stuff. And then a little bit later we will start doing the same for the actual store paths in the binary cache. So that's the plan right now, and we would probably run this garbage collection every 6 months or every year or so. We still have to figure out those details, but yeah, that's the plan. And so so to reiterate, right now we're paying $6,000 a month for the binary cache. That's on top of the $9,000 a month donation from Amazon, and we have to fairly substantially reduce our storage costs, so something like 50%. And make it long-term sustainable, because the cache cannot keep growing forever, probably. So yeah, that's the current plan.
Cool. So again, because of the show of hand, I totally did not make this about 2 hours ago, but if you're new to Nix, first of all, I really do hope that you had a chance to build relationships, see faces today that you're going to be able to connect with and just build out the next few steps for you. But in general, and I know this has been said, the community operates across Discourse and Matrix. So one of those, join in. You can find any of us, like most of the folks in the community on there. Message, don't think twice about it. If someone can help out, they'll try to help out. If they can't, they'll find someone else that can help out. So really, be open to it. There's teams and leads. You can find that on the nixos.org website. If you're not finding the solution on Matrix, you're not finding it on Discourse, feel free also to reach out to teams and leads. There's obviously all of us at the foundation. There's also nix.dev for documentation and for onboarding and everything like that. Next. Cool. So I'll take a quick moment there. I've decided we'll do questions at the end, let everyone kind of flow through so we don't run out of time. And with that, I'm going to hand the mic over to Ryan. So thank you, guys.
Hello there, thank you. So I'm going to present some few things of the community. I'm a Nix developer in the community and also board observer for the foundation. We have the moderation team, which has seen some growth. We had some departure, we had 2 new arrivals. For example, we have 2 new members, Pi Games and Ryan Hendrickson. And yeah, the moderation team is one probably of the hardest jobs you can have in the community. It is very hard to balance out the opinions of each other and ensure that people can be productive in that environment and still feel safe and still feel heard with their opinions. So I really think that it is a team that we should support, a team that we should be very thankful for, and a team that is very hidden and silent in how they operate. So thanks to them, and they also NixOS contributors on the side. You can recognize some of the nicknames, I'm sure, for example, Python updates or MiG92, various contribution to the whole ecosystem. I think we can go to the next slide. So another big infrastructure, another big team is the infrastructure team. So we have the infrastructure team is composed of 2 sub-teams. The first team is the build infrastructure team. The build infrastructure team handles the machine that will build all the derivation, all the packages of Nix packages. Obviously, it's very, I would say, a bit sensitive because you have a signing key, you have private key material, you don't want to your packages, your cache packages to be poisoned. So it is a critical mission for the build infrastructure team to handle them. And not all the members listed here are build infrastructure members. So for example, Jonas is build infrastructure, Vladimir is infrastructure, Martin is infrastructure, build infrastructure, sorry. Thanks to them, they've been working on cleanup of the infrastructure repository, so looking at all our infrastructure machines, saying, oh, we're paying too much for this machine, we should probably consolidate it into this other machine. And so they achieved things like $700 per month of savings, which is a really nice start in a very fast amount of time. It is very exciting to see them at work, and thanks to them. And then we have another team, which is the non-critical infrastructure team. So in the community, we have many needs. So for example, sometimes the release managers need a calendar so that they can inform the community of when is the new release, and you can subscribe to that calendar. For example, also the marketing team might need some infrastructure to send newsletter or surveys. And those are what we put under the name of non-critical infrastructure. It is a much more approachable team that you can join as a system administrator, where you can work with people to use NixOS for NixOS itself. So you can see new members. We have plenty of new members in that new non-critical infrastructure, and plenty of projects available in the GitHub repository you can find here. And yeah, we have long-standing issues with our CI stuff. So Hydra, for example, we had a workshop on CI. The scale of Nix packages is so big that we have unique challenges appearing, and I would say technical debt to clean up. So we have a lot to do on performance improvements, and that's probably what we're going to focus on for the next years. I think we can move to the next slide. I will pass the micro to Rock Garbas.
Hey, lots of you are using Nix for quite a long time. And quite of you are new. What you're going to face is you're going to talk about Nix. That's what I did, and they told me this is marketing, so marketing team. Yeah, so if you want to, we try to spread the word of Nix around the world. What we do, we cover all the social postings that we try to do a frequent job. The newsletter, which was revived but will be put on the website very shortly. The website itself, we finally reached the point where we can work with the website a bit faster. So, and we need a lot of help with the website. So if you know some of the CSS, you don't have to do a lot. Please help us. This is where we need. And then we are also collecting certain metrics. One metrics which I was promised to explain was this one. Why this jump? You don't see it. I barely see it myself. Started at 2012, the graph. This is where the growth started, is in 2020. And then the big jump actually happened in April, May last year. I have my theories. They are not to be publicly shared because apparently I have strong opinions. No, it's just Nix got picked up by a lot of social media, YouTube content creators, and that's the spike. Most of you also heard about this now. What do we do with this? I think we are just on a good path. We need to provide good documentation. That's why all the work that's been there is very much appreciated. And I mean, come on, this graph looks just good, right? It's like we're going up. So, thank you.
So I'm going to do this pretty quickly because we're kind of starting to run out of time, and I think we're already over time. So this is actually a slide from Sylvan, in Finicil, who wasn't able to be here. Sylvan actually sunsetted the architecture team a bit ago for a multitude of reasons, where you can click on the link and then see it on the deck. But Finicil is continuing to do this and continuing to work on architecture, and the general ask is that you know that it exists, you know that there's a need. If there's folks interested in this area, please reach out. Please, come on in and help make it happen and volunteer. And I'm sorry that I'm running through it, but there's multiple channels that you can do it. Sylvan and Finicil also does weekly office hours, which I can only highly recommend. Tiafan? Mike?
Oh, okay. Okay, thanks. So I guess I have to be quick too. So very briefly, we saw a bunch of teams and teams' effort and all that. One issue we had, if you remember the graph of like this great, huge exponential growth, is that, well, if we have this growth, it's great, but then it means that we need to have some kind of structure around that, because otherwise new joiners just arrived and see these huge things and what the hell do I do if I want to help? So that's one axis that we wanted to put some effort on, and we've started on that. We're still going on to really try and give some more structure so that people can know how they can contribute, so that they just don't know how, but they have the ability to do that when they want. And they can also know what's going on, regardless of whether they want to contribute or not, which is this whole team empowerment effort to try and give some structure to the main groups that are acting around the different parts of the ecosystem, being like different like technical parts, Nix packages, Nix OS, and the non-technical parts like the moderation or the marketing that we just saw earlier. And that also ties to the fundraising aspect, because if like companies maybe, or any companies, institutions anywhere might be glad to give money to the Nix ecosystem to do things, but then we need to be able to spend that money efficiently, and that means that we must have some kind of structure to know how we can give grants to people or groups of people to do things efficiently, and that all ties to that subject. That's me again. Okay, so that's probably the seventh exponential graph that you see, it's always a bit the same thing. That one is the number of Nix contributors per year from 2015 to now. You see it's a nice, great exponential curve. We're all happy, Nix is getting more popular, but now we have scaling issues. The original Nix maintenance model was Elko doing a great job at developing that as a PhD student. Obviously, that doesn't scale when you have more than 200 contributors. So we need to change the way we develop things. Can you, yeah. And that's why, so a few years back, we created the Nix maintenance team, whose goal was to improve the experience for contributors, to make sure that they would want to keep contributing, bring back good contributions, and eventually help maintaining the thing, because that's always the trade-off. You have contributors who submit new features, but then they need to be maintained, and you need to review them, and all that. And you need to have a good ramp path so that people can eventually help maintaining the thing. And then the other problem is that, Ryan mentioned technical debt for Nix packages. Nix is pretty good in that aspect too. And there has been a tendency to just add new features to Nix, not always completely finish them because it's cool, we have something that works. I have something that works for me, it's in Nix, I'm glad. Maybe it's not completely documented, there's a few edge cases that people are not happy with, but then I lose the motivation to finish working on that. And that's our second big goal, to really finish up all these kind of things, sometimes small things, sometimes big things. I won't say the flake word because that can be a dangerous thing to say, but we really want to try and finish all this work in progress that we have. And that's also something where we can get a lot of help. There's a lot of small-ish tasks that can be accomplished as even if you don't yet know the code base, even if you don't know C++, I'll be honest, I've been working, the first time I've worked on Nix, that was one of the biggest refactorings of Nix that happened. I had never written a single line of C++ before. And it took me a while, but eventually we got there. So please do come and help.
Cool. All right, going to keep doing this pretty quickly. So once a year, we started this in 2022. Shit, we're in 24. We started this in 2022. We started doing a survey for the entire Nix community and those that are interested in it. This is the biggest survey that we've ever ran. So the last survey was 23. 2,500 responses, 47 questions, and it's online, it's on the discourse, go and read it. 92% are Nix users, 8% are not so surprising. There's some data here, I'm gonna skip by it. Lots of interesting stuff, lots of very surprising things. Bottom line, what we're asking for, give me a second. Pretty much what we're asking for is very soon the start of the next Nix survey is going to kick off. One, if you have survey experience or are just curious, join us. There's a channel on Matrix. If you're curious about things about Nix and want that question to come up into the survey, then advocate for it and we can figure it out. Number two, when the survey comes out, it is insanely paramount that you help us get it to as many people as possible so that can feed back into the community so that we have data to base things on. Guillaume kind of leads this. He's awesome. He also wrote this about a few hours ago, and thank you to him. I don't know if we had anything to say about release management really quickly. It's coming up.
Oh yeah. So about release management, so we have 2405. The release is in by the end of May. During the release management, we will call for release manager or release editor. Release manager is mostly technical. Release editor is mostly editing stuff, editing the release notes, making them cute, making them cool, so that people who will read them will be excited about the new release. And you can help. You can join and you can help the release community to release NixOS. And the last important ceremony of the release is the Zero Hydra failure. So this is a ceremony where we call everyone during the beta phase of NixOS 2405, and we will be in the PRs, waiting for new PRs to fix new packages, fix new NixOS tests, and everyone will try to merge them and get the number of failures super down. And this is how we ensure that the stable release of NixOS are indeed stable.
Cool. So you already found out about this. Usually we do this on the first slide on the first day of NixCon, but there is the NixPog. We still have a bunch left, so as you're going throughout the day, stop by some of the booths, collect them, and then maybe at some point you'll be able to buy something with them. This is actually a picture from the first NixCon post-COVID that Ryan helped organize as well. It was even more hacky than this, if you can believe it. Crazy. Bottom line, I think, again, we wanted to thank everyone for coming out here. I'm sorry we didn't have time for questions, but there's a bunch of other great speakers that we're pretty eager to hear and not just take up all the time on stage, but we're going to be walking around. We're going to be outside in the kind of like unconference zone, so find us and hassle us about things that you care about. And really, again, just lots of love for joining this community or being part of this community, and if there's anything we can do, let us know. So thank you guys, thank you everyone for speaking, and have a great rest of the day. Thank you.